Oh, hello world. Welcome to Walker in the Woods. Today I want to talk about the Hegelian Dialectic, and I wrote a verse to a famous song about it. Want to hear it? Here it goes. I saw terrorists on television. Some bombs got dropped on foreign land. I never made the connection. They were both made by Uncle Sam. No, they can't always get what they want. No, they can't always get what they want. No, they can't always get what they want. But when they try all the time, they know that they'll find they get what they need. Oh yeah, they get what they need. Oh mercy, they get what they need. Something like that. Just wrote it. Couldn't remember the words. But I think this one is kind of fitting due to the fact that we are going to be talking about the Hegelian dialectic. And I will keep this here as my crutch. First and foremost, what is the Hegelian dialectic? It is a three-stage process of thought where an initial idea or thesis is opposed by a contradictory idea or antithesis, antithesis, and the conflict between them is resolved in a new, higher level understanding called a synthesis, which then becomes a new thesis, continuing the cycle of development. It originated through a movement called German idealism, in which the philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, who was basically lived from 1770 to 1831, it was his concept in philosophy, the Hegelian dialectic. And basically, in simpler terms, it is problem, reaction, solution. Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, once said, never let a serious crime go to waste. He obviously learned through history that when there is a crisis, be it organic or manufactured, there's always a possibility to cash in, and it's often at the public's expense. So what does this mean for the public? A controlled narrative, maybe some tighter control usually follows, fewer liberties, and more power for the gov you love. Today, I am going to be counting down the top 10 that I came up with, and I'm sure there are plenty more. But the top 10, safe but edgy, safe for YouTube. These are factual, and I will try my best not to embellish on anything so as to not get deleted. But let's begin with number 10. There was a Reichstag fire in 1933. The problem, a German parliament building burns. What was the reaction? Public panic about communist plots. And the solution? Hitler gains emergency powers and dismantles democracy. Historians debate about who lit the match, but everybody does agree that Hitler used this problem brilliantly. He used the fire to persuade Hindenburg to pass an emergency law, or it was, I think, called the Enabling Act, restricting personal liberty. That's a new one. The decree for the protection of the people and state restricted free speech and freedom of the press, and it also allowed the German government to imprison enemies without trial. Number 9, Pearl Harbor. So moving forward, now the Reichstag, that was in 1933. In 1941 comes along Pearl Harbor. And of course, World War II. World War II started September 1st, 1939. And it wasn't until December 8th, 1941, when the United States decided to join. Why did they decide to join? Well, on that day, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, which is located in Hawaii. And the problem was it was a surprise, quote unquote, surprise. Was it a surprise? A lot of people believe that the government, the United States government, knew about it and allowed it to happen. But the problem was it was a surprise attack by the Japanese flying across the ocean undetected by radar. Their reaction, shock and unity and revenge by the American people. The solution, the United States enters World War II. And again, historians have shown that the United States intelligence did have warnings, but the attack provided the green light for war. And as Smedley Butler, a famous general, once said, war is a racket. And this isn't a conspiracy to say that war is good for business, big business. Number 8, let's look into the 1940s and the 1950s, the beginning of the Cold War and Red Scare. Communism and the fear of communist infiltration into the United States. The reaction, McCarthyism and blacklists and paranoia. This attacked or kind of permeated throughout a lot of Hollywood. There were a lot of show trials during that time and people pointing fingers at one another. Kind of a self-government experiment, you might say. And the solution was for massive military buildup and, again, an expansion of the security state. So each time one of these Hegelian dialectics come along, it just seems like the noose or rope kind of just keeps constricting a little bit, a little bit, a little bit tighter, kind of like that snake. When you breathe out, the snake will contract, not allowing you to take in that full breath ever again. Next is number 7, and we will head west to the Far East and Vietnam. So in 1964, there was an American battleship that was allegedly bombed in the Gulf of Tonkin. So this ship was bombed. That was the problem. And it was basically covered on the nightly news. And again, in the 60s, most Americans would sit around their television in the living room after dinner and watch Uncle Cronkite, Uncle Walt tell us the news. And so this ship was bombed. So what is the reaction? Well, again, outrage and a demand for retaliation. That's convenient. The solution? Congress passes the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which led to full-scale American involvement into the Vietnam War. Now, declassified NSA documents later revealed that the second attack never happened. However, an interesting little tidbit for you, the admiral or the rear admiral and naval aviator of this ship, guess who he was? I will give you a hint. His name was George Stephen Morrison. Now, think back, 1960s, California, Aldous Huxley, Doors of Perception, The Doors, Morrison, The Doors, Jim Morrison. Do you think there's a relationship there between George Morrison and Jim Morrison? Well, yes, there was a very tight relationship. George is Jim's father. So Jim Morrison, the heartthrob and kind of revolutionary singer icon in the 60s. His dad was the admiral on the ship that allegedly was bombed, which brought America into a full-fledged war in Vietnam. There is a really good book called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and it is written by David McGowan. I totally 110% recommend reading this book. It's a very, very interesting book. Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. A lot of your 60s iconic singers, bands have a lot of ties, bloodline ties to the military and blue blood, going way back into England and Germany. Now we're going to head southeast off of the mainland of the United States, and we're going to go into Cuba. And in 1961, there was a thing called the Bay of Pigs. And this was a failed attempt by the United States CIA to overthrow Fidel Castro's government. Now, the Bay of Pigs, it failed for several reasons, including poor planning and execution by the CIA. And the CIA also underestimated the strength of Fidel's military. It also underestimated the level of popular support for Fidel Castro's government at that time. However, do you think it deterred them? No, it did not. The next year in 1962, now this one was never executed, but it is declassified, and that was called Operation Northwoods. And again, now the Pentagon goes back to draft a plan for fake attacks to justify war in Cuba. Airplane bombings, staging fake terrorist attacks on American soil, blaming them on Cuba to justify an invasion. And what would the reaction have been? Of course, outrage, public anger, and let's jump back into another war. But luckily, Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, who was the president at that time, he rejected it, and war was averted. Now, 1 year later, on November 22nd of 1963, Kennedy was shot down in broad daylight in Texas. All right, so number 5 is one that happened in my lifetime, and it really opened my eyes to what is kind of happening possibly behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And this one happened on the 11th of September of 2001, 9/11. And this was a coordinated attack on the Twin Towers in New York City. The problem, there was a terrorist attack on U.S. soil, and Building 1 and Building 2, and there was also a Building number 7 that fell. Well, Building 1 and 2 were hit by an airplane, some kind of flying object, something. Something happened, and Building 1 falls, Building 2 falls, and Building 7 falls, free fall, speed, on television. Shock and horror. That was the reaction that I felt, and I watched it over here in South Korea. I still remember it very well. People always say, "Where were you when John F. Kennedy got shot?" Well, I wasn't around, but I do remember where I was on September the 11th. When it happened in the morning, it was the evening here in South Korea, and I remember it very well. But in America, yeah, there was national grief, calls for protection. There was fear, but also many reports of a really strong American cohesion, and nationalism was at an all-time high. Well, as Rob Emanuel says, never let a good crisis go to waste. You got to use that nationalism strike while the fire's hot. And so what did the American government decide to do? Well, their solution was to install a Patriot Act and mass surveillance and head off into war again, this time attacking Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, if we look at the Patriot Act, which was signed into law on October 26, 2001 by your junior president, Bush Jr., just weeks after 9/11. Of course, they said it stood for uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. And in four key areas: surveillance, information sharing, detention, deportation, and financial tracking. Can you feel it tightening? Can you feel that boa constrictor getting a little bit tighter? Major surveillance programs launched and expanded: NSA, warrantless wiretapping, phone metadata collection, FBI, packet sniffing software used to monitor internet traffic, the Patriot Act. You know, words have meaning. And of course, when I said that patriotism was at an all-time high, then obviously they used that word to install an act that basically takes away the freedoms that we are so proud of. Supporters of this act say that it prevents attacks, but critics will argue that the Patriot Act further erodes privacy and civil liberty on an unprecedented scale. What say you? Number 4, weapons of mass destruction. This was in 2003. Problem: Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He has that yellow cake. He's hiding these nuclear bombs somewhere in Iraq, and we've got to go in and sniff them out and find them because he's not allowed to have them. What is the reaction? Terrorism. Terrorism is the word of the decade, really, possibly the word of the century, because it still hangs over all of us, even today. And probably that cloud is getting darker and darker because who's the terrorist? I don't know. It's not me. Is it you? Might be you. Well, those weapons never materialized, even though George Bush Jr. was looking under every table and chair and couldn't find them anywhere. But that war did help reshape the Middle East, and the war on terror continues, and the fear continues. Number 8 is the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, in 2008, I was over here in South Korea, but I guess the problem was that in America, the housing bubble bursts, and major banks face collapse, and global markets will be in free fall. The reaction, of course, again, is public panic and economic depression and mass unemployment. The solution: trillions in taxpayer-funded bailouts and stimulus packages, consolidation of power in, quote, too big to fail, unquote, banks. And in dialectic terms, the crisis or problem created public fear, which is the reaction, which made people accept the unprecedented bailouts and centralization of financial power. That is the solution. So what was the outcome? The biggest banks survived, and they came out even stronger, while ordinary people lost their homes, their job, and their savings. Number 2, the war on terror continues. Now, this again started way back in 2001, and it is the global terrorism threat. It's a perpetual fear of hidden enemies, which is our reaction. And the solution, of course, is more war, endless war, drone strikes now with newer technology, and a further erosion of civil liberties. And I just have a very short story, a personal story. When I was in Seoul after the attack in 2001 in September, it was probably October or November. I was walking around the streets of Seoul, actually not too far away from the U.S. Embassy. I still remember this day very well. I'm walking down the street, big, broad street, busy street in downtown Seoul, and a young college-aged female comes up and asks me a question in English. Excuse me, I'm doing a project for my university, and can I ask you a question or two? And I said, of course. And so she asked me, how long do you think this war on terror will last? And that's the first time that I actually thought about it. And the answer immediately came to my mind that, and what I told her was that this war will never end. And she said, why? And I said, well, just the word alone, terror. Who is the terrorist? Is it some bogeyman in a cave in Afghanistan? Is it Hussein and his WMDs over there in Iraq that has a uncanny knack for being able to hide those big bombs away from Uncle Sam? Is it I don't know, those Vietnamese in the Cu Chi tunnel hiding and scurrying around? Is it being over here in Korea? I mean, the terrorists up north, I mean, they're always up to no good, and now, well, it kind of seems like domestic terrorism is kind of on the rise, doesn't it? Perpetual war. And finally, number one, numero uno for this list is the COVID-19 pandemic. And this started in 2020, the same year that I moved to this apartment. Fairly newly wedded couple, me and my wife, moving into a beautiful little town. Bright future ahead. Boom! Hello. Lockdown. Can't go to work. Gotta get online and check out and learn Zoom. Gotta cover the spirit, or else you can't go shopping. You can't go outside. You can't go into the mountain without one of these on. Where did it come from? Somewhere in China. Saw it on the news. So this was a global virus outbreak, and that was a big problem for everyone around the world, not just the United States and its enemies. But yeah, this one basically affected pretty much everyone around the globe that at least, had the internet and was able to tune in and figure out what was the problem was. So the reaction, of course, again, is what? Fear, uncertainty, and a demand for safety. Please help us. Please save us. We know not what to do, how to protect ourselves, how to allow our bodies, our immune system to protect us from the environment. Please let us go to the store and buy the toilet paper and water. We'll do anything for that. So the solution, of course, was lockdowns, mandates, and massive government spending. And of course, no matter what you believe about the origin of this, or even if it really does, exist as they say it does, a virus, I mean, living, is a virus living? Is it not living? You can Google that one and find out. But it's clear that the crisis was used to expand government and corporate power worldwide. And the world is still reeling from that pandemic. and they say that all the world is a stage. So rather than end this now, I have a preview of maybe some upcoming dialectics to a theater near you and me. I will give you my top three of what I believe is happening and is coming. We are seeing a push for digital identification systems worldwide. And at the same time, mass illegal immigration is creating real strain on nations. So there's a lot of illegal immigrants flooding across into the United States. At least they were until Trump got back into office. I'm not over in the United States. I can't say for certain, but under Biden, millions of, again, immigrants, fantastic, please come. Illegal is the key word, and even here in Korea, I'm a legal immigrant. I have my visa, I have my documentation, I pay money to be here for the paperwork. But the illegal immigration has been pouring into the United States and throughout Europe and parts of Asia. And so this is a huge strain on nations, healthcare, housing, and jobs. And the problem of unmanageable migration could lead to, the reaction is citizens, the real citizens, the natural born citizens, are demanding stronger border control and accountability. And so, what could the solution be? Well, yeah, I mean, the government seemed to allow all of these illegal immigrants to come in, just couldn't keep the borders closed. So what could be the solution? Well, I guess digital ID might be a good solution. Digital ID systems can verify authentic citizenship, in which, yes, you have the digital ID, be it, you know, on a card or under your skin, tattooed on your forehead. This will be the method that will allow you access to services and food and also possibly monitor movement. It does sound very convenient on the surface. But again, just like the war on terror, this could be another permanent surveillance tool. Just in my class yesterday, I have a writing class, and one of the prompts was, what do you think the world will be like in 10 years? And also this small essay that we read about driverless cars. And then I asked my students, do you think the driverless cars are a good idea or a bad idea? And I had them raise their hands, and the ones that raised their hand saying it would be a good idea. Well, it'll cut down on accidents, and people who don't want to drive, don't like to drive, they can have a car. And others, that said it's not a good idea. Well, no one quite saw it from my point of view. So once I let the students speak, I gave them my interpretation of driverless cars and electric cars. And basically, if you are naughty and your car is electric and the government deems you unsavory for any reason, they'll push the button and that car will be terminated, turned off, and you will not be going anywhere. So they kind of looked at me with a kind of that puppy dog tilt of the head, and a few lights went on, but it's like, does not compute. Maybe it does. Go home, think about it. But yeah, so the question is, will the digital ID, will it protect national security or quietly reduce individual freedoms? The second one that I want to talk about is here, digital currency in the United States dollar. 1971, President Nixon takes the US dollar currency off of the gold standard, which turns it into fiat currency, which basically means that that dollar has all the value of this paper that I'm holding, this little post-it thing in my hand. The only thing that gives that dollar value is the belief that this has purchasing power and the fact that it's the petrodollar, in which all these countries need to use it to be able to buy, trade, sell oil. And of course, the Federal Reserve is the private bank. Nothing federal about the Federal Reserve, but it is a private bank that creates the United States dollar. But all they really do now is just keep adding zeros onto it. They're really not even printing cash paper currency anymore. And a lot of stores, you notice, are going cashless, even cashierless. You have to go and you have to scan everything yourself and then scan your card. But yeah, if they get their way and paper money disappears, then every transaction could be tracked, monitored, and of course, even restricted. Again, if you're naughty and all you have is a card or a chip and the government deems you unsavory, well, they'll just terminate that little code across your forehead and say, well, nope, Stevie can no longer shop here and he can no longer drive there. And it's basically a grid. And again, smart cities are a thing that if you don't know about them, I would suggest you learn 15-minute cities. But that's not one of my three here. So the problem, of course, is inflation, debt crisis, and the declining trust in the United States dollar. The reaction is public fear of collapse and a demand for economic stability. The solution is a CBDC, or central bank digital currency. This will replace paper cash. It will promise security and convenience. Now, that's another one that my students said, oh, it's going to be convenient. Driverless cars, convenient. Credit, convenient. Don't have to carry around the paper. No coin anymore. It's convenient. Until it's not. But once cash is gone, every transaction will be tracked. And again, that can be good. All the baddies out there can't be buying and selling their, guns and drugs and whatnot. But all the goodies out there also, all of their financial freedoms will basically vanish overnight. And finally, climate change and global governance. Climate change is framed as humanity's ultimate crisis. And again, going back into the 80s, pretty sure it was the 80s, there's Time magazine covers, the big freeze is coming. It was the little ice age, basically. The world's getting colder. And then somewhere in the 90s and early 2000s, with the help of Vice President Al Gore and his book, The Inconvenient Truth, he started going on the road, peddling his book and talking about global warming and how everything is going to be heating up and we're all going to fry to death. So the pendulum pretty much swung from we're going to freeze to death to now we're going to fry to death. And then somewhere in the last decade or so, they decided that, since the thermometer is, not really going way down or going way up, but it is going up and down, let's just change that and say it's global, it's climate change. Well, that's kind of like the war on terror. It's like, who's the terrorist? And yeah, the climate is changing right now. It actually was cooler this morning than it is right now at 12 o'clock noon. The sun is high in the sky. And it looks like a fairly good day, but no waves. So I'm just going to stay here and keep plugging along with this video. So what could the problem be? The problem, rising temperatures, lowering temperatures, lowering temperatures, rising temperatures. Basically, it's rising temperatures, but it's under the guise of climate change, which brings about extreme weather. And there is a lot of extreme weather. That is factually true. Bigger storms, stronger storms, but there are also other people kind of thinking that that might not just be due to the temperature, but possibly something called um, weather manipulation, going back to Vietnam, cloud seeding, all of those different things. Hard to say. Environmental damage, the water's rising, maybe. I don't know. The reaction, what do you think? You think it's more fear, public alarm, calls for urgent action? We got to save the planet at the cost of killing everyone? Yeah. The solution? Hey, let's throw more money at it. Or better yet, take money from the taxpayers. How about a global carbon tax or energy restriction? Policies that centralize authority. So now each country doesn't have its own, liberty to govern, but let's maybe it's time to get that grid centrally located into one place, maybe in Switzerland, that will have the new world order under its thumb. Whether real science or political leverage, the solutions often concentrate power far beyond national borders. So there you go. That is my top 10 from the past and in the present, and my top three, that kind of the direction we're going. But how I'm going to end this is with Franklin D. Roosevelt, who he had a famous quote, and he said, "The only thing that we have to fear is fear itself." The one consistency throughout all of these Hegelian dialectics, problem, reaction, solution, right in that reaction is fear. That's what they're counting on, is the fear. Our reaction. We got to be fearful. And if we're fearful or angry enough, something along the lines of an emotion, uncontrolled emotion, is when they can let that snake get a little bit tighter and hold on for more control. So, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. And don't even fear fear. As Alan Watts said, it's just an emotion. You just have to let it come and let it go. Watch it come and watch it go. Until next time, I am Stephen Walker. Give me a thumbs up if you dig this content, if you made it this far. If not, I can't always get what I want. So, later, everybody.